First Conspiracy by Brad Meltzer and Josh Mensch is a well-written and engaging light read about the historically mysterious plot to kill or kidnap George Washington in the early part of the Revolutionary War. Meltzer is a novelist, and so, as expected, the book is easy to read and paints a vivid word picture of the places, situations, and events described. This is good because the historical evidence of the actual plot itself is somewhat patchy, and padding is thus very important. Included is a great deal of biographical information about the persons involved. The story is broken into fairly small chapters, making it a good bathroom book or other occasional reader. Although at 362 pages, not counting notes, it is a weighty enough tome that it is worth buying, and is sufficiently filled with tidbits to make it worth a second read. The book covers the dangerous days of the early Revolutionary War, mostly before the Declaration of Independence, and describes the sorry state of the only semi-united colonial militias and the formation of the Continental Army. Meltzer and Mensch describe a rebellion in disarray, beset with low morale, a surprising amount of corruption and graft, with soldiers motivated more by the lure of pay than talk of freedom. They cover the background and the exceptional character of Washington, and of how he came to be made general of the Continental Army, due to his military experience in the French Indian Wars, as well as his personal gravitas and bearing. They describe Washington's background, mired in personal tragedy, and his efforts at bettering himself, keeping the interest of both casual reader and history buff. It was interesting to hear of how Washington endeavoured to project an aura of personal strength and competence, while at the same time being self-aware enough to attempt to remedy his inadequate knowledge with the purchase and study of books on military tactics. His personal sense of honour and desire to be always respectable and upright are contrasted with the low character of much of his army, and we are shown how he attempted to improve his men's morale and morals with the force of his personality and standing orders. I personally enjoyed the narrative and biopics of many of the bit part players who are introduced into the narrative, from the small-time gang of counterfeiters to the petty bourgeois gunsmith with ambitions of becoming a big man after a British victory. The scheming and corrupt Tory mayor of New York was unknown to me, but many familiar as well as unfamiliar people are at least introduced, even if not always fleshed out as much as I would have liked. The action cuts from one place and point of view to another, which suits a small chapter format. Each could be read almost as its own story, building a mosaic of greater events with each well-crafted piece. I would have found this hopping around irritating in a more serious and in-depth book, but it suited this work well, and I could pick up and read a few pages and then come back later and still know what was going on. Washington's ability to learn quickly and to ask for and to follow advice are also shown to good effect, as are his personal fears of failure and dishonour. We are treated to a historical scene that sounds almost like a movie, with him personally breaking up two brawling groups of soldiers by seizing the ringleaders with his own hands and hoisting them up and apart. We are also introduced to the Governor of New York, William Tyrone, who is portrayed as Washington's greatest personal foe, a man as smart and capable as Washington himself, who was able to run a huge spy network and influence politics and city officials from the safety of a British ship in New York Harbour. A man who could have subverted the entire revolution had his agents been able to seize or to kill Washington, and someone who was able to gather intelligence and form an armed fifth column of politically and financially motivated men inside of the colonies. The efforts of colonial government and Washington to combat British spying and efforts to corrupt and turn American soldiers are covered, and whet the appetite to read more on this subject. We are also shown the sad tale of a petty criminal gang and how one, a widower and single father, helped expose a plot to remove the one man who could hold the Continental Army together and resist the mightiest military power on the face of the earth at that time. This book is a lot of fun to read if, like me, you are a history fan, but it is also enough like a novel that a mystery or thriller reader will enjoy it. It's harder to build tension when the reader already knows the outcome, but the authors still manage to make the history exciting as the narrative builds to the climax as the British ready to take Boston and crush the rebellion, ending the fledgling American Republic. In conclusion, I recommend this book to a casual reader who knows little or even nothing of the subject, and who will be guided by the hand through a visit to the early Revolutionary War and the people who lived there. It is an easy book that's forgiving of a distracted or intermittent reader, and the hardback is nicely bound and should last. It is not a deep dive, in my opinion, so a more knowledgeable history fan might be disappointed. Score: ease of reading, 5. Engagement value, 4. Fun value, 4. Language use, 3 to 4. Reread value, 3. In short, worth your time. This has been the first 5x5 project review. I hope to have something up in a week or two, so check back on BitChute, and maybe I'll be on YouTube by then.